How's it going, guys? My name is Zach with the Movie Castle, and today we're going to be talking about Umma. Umma is the Korean word for mother, and this is a new movie, just came out a little bit ago, so from 2022, and this is written and directed by Iris K. Shim, and stars Sandra Oh and Fivel Stewart. And this movie was put out by Raimi Productions. Raimi Productions, horror fans, any guess who owns that production house? Yeah, of course, this is Sam Raimi's new production company. Now, I'm kind of curious, Sam Raimi also did Ghost House Pictures. Did he leave Ghost House and start this up, or does he have two production companies? I'm not sure, but if any of you guys know, I'd be curious to know what's going on there. But always good to see Sam Raimi involved. He's a really cool creator. He's done a lot of work directing, but actually has done a whole bunch more work producing, creating production houses, and really getting a lot of horror content out there. Some really fun stuff, so always gotta love Ghost House and now Raimi Productions. But talking about Ghost House, I believe it was actually their first movie, was the remake of The Grudge, and wow, that movie did scare me a whole lot back in the day. And the remake of The Grudge, and then someone else would make the remake of The Ring, and those movies were like the 1-2 punch that really got American audiences interested in Asian horror, and a whole lot of Asian horror movies were exposed to a much bigger audience. And now seeing Sam Raimi's new production company doing another movie, this one's Korean, you know, it's really cool to see that come around again. And yeah, I have just a ton of nostalgia for Asian horror movies, and I'll always have a soft spot for them. So really cool to see this, but speaking of nostalgia, that's probably what a lot of people are going to have with this movie. For the right crowd, that is. This movie really does feel like a movie that would have been made in like the late 2000s, early 2010s. And if you guys are fans of this, like if you like, say, another Ghost House movie, The Possession, you guys are probably gonna like this. Really does feel like a retro throwback movie, and it's pretty good. It's not the best thing ever, but it's pretty good. We'll get more into that in a second. Brief synopsis. This movie is about a mother and daughter. They live alone, and the mother has a dark past. She was abused by her mother, but that's kept a lot from us. She's very closed off about this. But one day, her uncle shows up with a suitcase, and inside the suitcase is some of her mother's belongings, and her urn. Her ashes are in there. And the uncle says, "Your mother's very upset that you abandoned her. You have to give her a proper funeral, or her spirit's going to be at unrest." So you have the ghost shows up at this farm. You have the daughter who's really in the dark and is trying to find out what's going on. But you also find out that even though the mother and daughter love each other, the relationship might not be as healthy as it seems at first glance. So a lot going on here. And I guess we should go on with the biggest pros. And that, of course, is character with this movie. The characters are defined a whole lot better than a lot of horror movies' characters are. And seeing the mother-daughter relationship here, as fleshed out as it is really cool. You know, you get where the two definitely love each other, but you see the things that are going to cause this relationship a lot of harm. They're together, but they pretty much only have each other, and you can see that the mother's fears have isolated the daughter. She doesn't go out much, she doesn't make much friends, and the mother is really so obsessed with losing her that it might actually drive her away. You get a little thing like, oh, she wants to go to college. That's going to upset the mother, even though it's something the daughter probably really wants to do. So it is an interesting relationship. And also the mother's dark past, it's kind of left vague for most of the movie. And in turn, in your head, you kind of imagine just how bad it could be. And I do wish we find out a bit about it towards the end. I kind of wish it was a bigger, more complex story. But it is it is kept kind of vague, and in turn in your brain you come up with all these crazy things that may have happened. But I do wish, because it's left vague, the story is mainly told from the mother's perspective. She's obviously the biggest actress here. It's told from the mother's perspective, yet she's not admitting to the daughter, or in turn the audience, what's really been going on. So I kind of wish the story was told more from the daughter's perspective, because the daughter and the audience have a similar goal of trying to figure out what the mother's been hiding from us. So I wish this was more the daughter's movie. I think that just would have worked better with the plot, but it's still pretty cool. And also, she has a fear of electricity. Something sparked, didn't mean to make a pun, but something sparked this in her past, and you get moments where she like pulls out a typewriter and types with an old school typewriter, or they need to go out at night and she uses a lantern. I really did like when you have to think how crazy your life would be without electricity, and I really wish this was defined more. I really wish this was a larger chunk of the movie, is them trying to figure out how to do stuff without electricity, you know? Like they have someone that distributes their honey for them. They sell honey for a living. And I really wish we got more of just what their world was like, because I did find it pretty fascinating. And I wish there was more of this. Sadly, though, one of the weaker elements is the scares. The scares are very, very standard. The new scare methods, you know, like there is some modern ghost things in here. For example, the uncle's lecturing the mother, and in the background you see the grandmother raising her hand and pointing it at her, but she's like out of focus. So there is some cool modern stuff, but a whole lot of the scares are the ghost jumps out and disappears in a cut. And so yeah, jump scares, which I personally don't mind jump scares. I really don't like the disappearing in a cut, though. That happens a lot. So it's not super scary, but a lot of people have said this might be a good horror film for someone who's not super into it, because the characters are really well defined and it's not too scary, you know, so this could be like a good gateway horror movie. And I guess I see that there. But yeah, the scares aren't the best, and like you have two people for the most part in this movie. They're isolated on this farm, so you know you're not going to get a big body count or anything. And I kind of wish that this movie went darker and was scarier and the ghost was more threatening, but at the same time, it's fine. So it's not the scariest thing ever. It does feel like an old school ghost movie. I say old school and I mean 2010, what does that say? But there's a lot to like here, especially with the characters and the story. But as far as a ghost horror movie, not the biggest and scariest thing ever, especially when we live in a post-Hereditary, post-James Wan world. Yeah, ghost movies have gotten a whole lot creepier lately, and this really does feel like a 2010 ghost movie, you know? And yeah, PG-13. What you gonna do, you know? But anyway, it's a good enough movie, primarily on the character side, primarily on the story side. I just really wish it was a little scarier, but hey, it's good for what it is. Without further ado, let's go ahead and analyze the plot a little bit. I'm not going to be doing any major spoilers. I do want to analyze the movie, I'll just be avoiding the end. Anyway, we open up with a pretty cool opening credits, actually. Little electrical elements that are kept mainly in the dark, and we get, you know, people crying and screaming. So we get the idea of trauma without necessarily knowing exactly what it is. And then we get a shot of the mother when she's younger, putting a box of light bulbs in a cellar. Anything she doesn't like, she's going to put it in that cellar and lock it away. And then we jump to the future. So yeah, we get the idea of torment, but we don't get it all spelled out for us. So I do like that. We jump to the future. The mother has a daughter of her own, and the daughter doesn't know about the mother's mother, the grandma. This might get a little confusing trying to refer to all these characters. Anyway, the daughter doesn't know about the grandma, the mother's kept it hidden, and they live alone on the farm. She's got a fear of electricity, so they don't interact with it at all. The daughter thinks it will physically hurt the mother, and they live really isolated. They have one guy that comes to their house, that he works for the store, and he's been selling their honey, and he actually started selling it online, which these two know very little about electricity, you know? So they sell it online, and he said it's actually taking off online. A few influencers mentioned it, and now we're actually selling out. If you can make more, that'd be great. So overall, they're happy. The business is taking off. They're doing well financially. Well, one day, as the daughter's leaving, she passes a Korean man heading to the mother's house. They talk for a little bit, but she doesn't speak Korean, so they don't really say much. And the guy gets to the mother's house. Well, turns out this is the uncle, and the uncle has some news. The mother's mother, the grandma, has died, and he says on her deathbed, she called out for you. Why did you abandon her? And he really lays on the guilt trip pretty hard. He says, I just passed your daughter. She doesn't speak Korean. You changed your name to an American name. I could barely find you. You're out in the middle of the country. No one knows where you are. It took me forever to find you and tell you that your mother had died, and she's upset you abandoned her. How could you do that? She called out for you as she's dying. Well, he picks up a suitcase, a pretty big suitcase, and inside the suitcase are a bunch of things the mother cared for. A special fancy robe, a family heirloom mask, and, of course, her ashes. The mother's ashes are in a big urn in there, and the uncle says, give her a proper burial. Her spirit is definitely not at rest. But the mother doesn't want to do this for her mother. She's like, this person was crazy, this person abused me. I'm not going to do that. She's going to go in the cellar. But of course, before she can do this, the daughter gets back and sees it, and she goes, no, ignore that. So she's going to be hiding what's going on. So while she's starting to get haunted by the ghost of her mother, the daughter is prying, and the mother doesn't like when she pries. But also, she's almost done with high school. She's starting to think about college, and the one guy that's their friend gives her a college application. She's filling it out on the typewriter, and that's going to get the mother very upset. How could you think about leaving me? She actually started the bee business because it was her daughter's idea, and now she'll be left alone doing something she doesn't really want to do, and the daughter will leave her. And you kind of see the mother's mother abused the mother, and now she's wanting to be better, but also not wanting her daughter to leave, and the daughter's going to strike out. That'll make her angry, make her in turn more like her mother, and make the daughter in turn want to leave even more. So you see, it's a really the case of secular violence, and it really is sad. And the whole trope of becoming your mother really is in this movie. And also, you get a moment, the ghost has been haunting the mother for quite some time, and when the daughter's thinking about leaving, the ghost goes, she's just like you when you were younger. She's abandoning you. Don't you think she should be punished? And I do really like, it's kind of like a Grady in The Shining. Don't you think she should be corrected? So yeah, there are actually quite a few Shining references in this movie. But anyway, I guess talk a bit about the ghost. The ghost is obviously going to be wearing that mask and robe. It's a pretty cool design. Sadly, she's not the scariest thing ever. I think a lot of times, you know, people sometimes criticize Asian horror because a lot of their ghosts look very similar, but that is a really good design. Just seeing the creepy dead face, where actually, even though it's a scary mask, I think it would have been scary if we saw the creepy ghost face more. But a whole lot of popping up and then going away in the cuts. And, you know, the jump scares aren't as effective as when you see the ghost really weighing into the mother's mind, you know, and I really wish this got more psychological and messed up. You know, I think you could have really made this movie way darker than it turned out to be. But yeah, a lot of jump scares, and they're so-so. But when it works, it works. And when you see the mother getting it, when you see the mother's mother getting into the mother's head, well, it's a lot of mothers, but when you see the psychological torture and when you see her getting into her mind, that's where it's the most effective, not the jump scares. And overall, not the scariest movie ever, but still it does have a lot working for it, so I don't want to diminish that. So yeah, and not the scariest thing ever, and I wish the horror structure was laid out better, you know? I wish this was darker, I wish it was scarier. There are a few things, like in the trailer, the stepping on the baby chicken scene. You know, there are a few well thought out things like that, but for the most part, mainly jump scares. So yeah, not super scary, but the characters really do work out right. The idea of becoming your mother, the idea of history repeating itself, and just the interesting and well-developed relationship between the mother and daughter. Yeah, a little bit at the end, they do start to snap at each other kind of out of nowhere, and I wish we got a few scenes of them almost breaking before they actually break. But for the most part, it's a good relationship. So overall, I like this movie. It wasn't the best thing ever. I think for the right crowd, if you watched a whole lot of horror movies around 2010 and you're nostalgic for that time, the right crowd is definitely going to respond to this movie super well. So, not the best thing ever, but I can totally see a lot of people liking it. Good story, not the scariest thing ever, but good story. Anyway, to everyone who's watched so far, thank you for watching. To everyone who's liked and subscribed, thank you. You really are helping the channel out. I'll leave a relevant playlist on the bottom. This should be my 2022 playlist. If you want to see me talk about more new movies, I've talked about the new Scream, I talked about the Netflix Chainsaw Massacre, I've talked about The Cursed, and just recently I talked about the movie X. So yeah, it's a new playlist, but I am really adding to it, and I'm looking forward to new horror movies coming out this year. I mean, we have the Joe Hill Black Phone movie. That looks pretty cool. Netflix is going to have a Choose or Die movie. That looks fun. So I am looking forward to new horror movies coming out. But anyway, have a good day. I'll see you guys again very, very soon. 2022 playlist on the bottom. Have a good day now.